Now that the 5 stringers are run to the back of the boat, I'm going to switch gears and go ahead and finish this bulkhead, or replace this bulkhead. We want to pull the engines, which means building an A-frame, which will sit on top of this. The back deck sits on this bulkhead. This bulkhead is temporarily held up with a 2x12 and a bunch of screws, and I want to make this rigid. So I spent a lot of time grinding out nasty stuff. I've got 2 high stringers show some rot, but coincidentally that's the stringers that I will be able to continue my new stringers next to. The stringers that are lower, which should have rotted because they have more exposure to water, they seem to be okay for now. For now we're good. But I've got this cleaned up. I want to put some glass to glass down my new stringers, and then I'll put solid blocks across here. From the top of the stringers down will be solid wood blocking. On top of that, I'll probably lay a 1-foot sheet of the floor plywood. And the only reason I'm not laying a 4-foot sheet is because I'll probably need to lay under it and drill some holes for some water fills and some water pipes, etc. If I only lay a 1-foot sheet, I'll still have access. And on top of that sheet, I'll splice back all this plywood that I cut. And when I get it all spliced in, I will put another layer of 1/2 inch on top of that to make sure it's plenty strong enough. Then we'll have a bulkhead that will hopefully support an A-frame. We can get these big engines out of here. And also, I'll be able to throw down some sheets of plywood, so I'll have a flat working surface in here, which would be nice. I've glued up the blocks that go between them, that are between them. And yesterday I cut them to shape and glassed the bottom edges to make sure that water can't get into them. This morning I put a thick bead of caulk, set them into place, and then added caulk for the chamfer on the inside. On the back side, I'm not going to be able to do anything until we pull the engines. So when this sets up, I will glass it in. I did some glassing yesterday, so about 1/3 of the stringers are glassed in pretty well. So I've done a lot of fiberglassing on the stringers back in the back, and I'm ready to put down a sheet of plywood. The only thing I had not dealt with was this strange detail that goes around the perimeter. It's a 1x4 that's glassed to the well, right here it's a 2x4, but most places it's a 1x4. It was glassed before this plywood panel was put in place, and it goes, and attached to it is a 1x2. It makes a little lip, and on the lower lip they have a 1x4 that holds up to 1/2 inch plywood, and on the upper lip is where they set the 1/2 inch plywood. And then that's glass also. But apparently the fiberglass was letting water get behind it. It's really, really thin. You can tell this one is broken. And that part of the boat is a little trough, so it would just sit there. I'm going to bring you over to this other spot. You can see better. You can see that against the wall there's a little dip. So condensate or whatever, window leakage or whatever was getting back there, and it all rotted all the way around the perimeter of the boat. And I couldn't put it back like original because I can't get under this plywood to glass it. So I just said, well, what the heck? It's not structural as far as the boat goes. I came away from the wall, and I'm leaving spaces at each end, so if there's water behind there, it can get out. And I just caulked down a treated pine 2x. I used my straight edge and ripped it so it's the same height. The plywood will lay flat. It is strictly caulked, and I'm not going to glass it. There's no need. It was caulked yesterday. It is very strong. So I'm ready for plywood. Little bit of grinding this morning, and I'm now laying down my first sheet of plywood, and I'm trying to determine to get it square with the hull as much as practical. If I measure back from where the old bulkhead was on both sides, the same amounts, 15 and 9/16. Two transmissions measure differently, so it's kind of a crapshoot. Did they lay the engines in there in different spots, or did they put the old bulkhead in different spots? I don't think it makes a lot of difference. There's a recess in the center of the wall. I'm assuming there was a ladder here to get out the back window. I was kind of hoping my plywood would sit far enough back to catch the bottom of that recess. That's like 3 inches. And to do that, I'd have to notch it around both engines, and it wouldn't be supported, so it wouldn't do a whole lot of good. So I think I'm gonna pass on that. I'm gonna slide that plywood till it touches the engines, and call it good. Okay, first 2 pieces of plywood was the first run. It's a strip across the back, 16 inches wide. Ready to go in. I sealed the bottom and the edges with paint, just exterior house paint. Figured it couldn't hurt. The little bit of bilge is going to be humid, so it'll just help keep the plywood from absorbing quite so much moisture. And while I had the paint out, I went ahead and put a heavy coat on the inside of my my little scupper holes or limber holes, just in case I scratched through the fiberglass, but I don't think I did. Anyway, I have another coat to protect the wood from absorbing water. I think this plywood, this 3/4 inch deck, is going to add substantially to the strength of the hull if I screw and glue it down, which is what I'll do. I'm going to screw and glue it down. It'll be permanent part of the boat. It's not going to come up. The only parts that can come up are the removable hatches over the water tanks. Okay, we have some floor. This first strip is screwed and caulked down, never to be removed, at least not by this old man. These 2 squares are just sitting there just to give me something to stand on. I haven't finished glassing underneath them. Now, the wood I took out was very, very rotten. I'm going to have to assume that this back wall has settled over time. When I put the 2x12 up there, I didn't really gain anything. I was just trying to keep it from going down. So I have a jack. It's right over the center stringer. After I remove the 2x12, I'm going to see if I can't get it to go up a 1/4 inch or 1/2 inch or something before I patch in my sides. That's an assumption, but based on everything else on the boat, it must be down a little bit. So I took off the 2x12, and I realized that my jack wasn't set very straight. So I let off my jack, and the whole back came down at least 1 inch and made all kind of cracking sounds. So it was kind of scary. I got my jack reset, and I got it pushed. You know, it's pushed hard. I don't know how hard to push on it, but I got back what I lost plus some. So I'm gonna make it rigid from there. So now I've cut the bottom of the existing plywood at a horizontal line all the way across, 14 inches up from the new deck. I got some 1/2 inch plywood, 14 inches, and I'm going to screw it and caulk it into place. I'm using the scraps of what came out the old boat where I can. It's pretty good plywood, or was pretty good plywood. It's going to be pretty ugly from the front, but it's okay. It's going to be uglier from the engine room. So with my trusty straight edge that I've been using the whole time, I've tapped the plywood around. It's not fastened to the floor yet until I get it in a straight line. But when I do that, it pushes it back pretty far. So there appears to be a terrible bow in this wall. Well, pretty loose. Okay, so I'm going to fasten the plywood to the floor in a straight line, and then I'll push this back and add some braces to keep it back, hopefully. Wanted to show how I attached the wall to the floor. I ran this little 1/2 by 1/2 strip and screwed it down about every 6 inches straight down to the floor, and then I screwed it into the first sheet of plywood from front to back. So that keeps everything in line, and then the next time I have rosin going, I'll glass it. I'll put a little sheet of glass down there. Okay, it's all patched up. Pretty ugly, but we're going to cover it with another layer of 1/2 inch for strength, and then at some point in the future we'll cover it with some 1/4 inch paneling or something. I'm not sure what the finished wall is going to be, but I was able to straighten it up. I might have pushed it up too much in the middle. It may have more of a crown than it was supposed to have, but I'm okay with that. I have 2 more wide pieces. I'll put them from the doorway coming out. They won't go all the way. I don't want to go all the way because we still have to remove these windows or replace some rotten wood, and I think it would just be in the way if I go all the way. But it'll go a good ways, and it'll cover a bunch of those splices, and it'll make that bulkhead strong so we can lift the engine and rely on the bulkhead not to collapse. Okay, we're finished for now. The plywood, the doubler plywood on the end is going to wait for the windows. The bottom of this little block out is going to wait till we get the engine room cleaned so I can do it from the other side. And the same with this end, waiting on the windows, and it's all good. It's very strong.